So we are firmly in the month of March. And if you know like I know, March is Women's History Month. And what better way to show the ladies some love than by going through the history of hip hop and ranking the 20 best female MC albums. Come through. What up, y'all? Thank you once again for joining your boy in another edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions here on YouTube. Happy to chill with y'all today for this Women's History Month. And I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk about my favorite and the best female hip hop albums. And I'll tell you why. I've gone on record. I've been real. I've been keeping it a buck because that's what I do here. If you ask me, the best female MCs are better than the best male MCs. Why would I say that? It's not pandering, it's real. Because in a male-dominated genre like hip-hop, a woman has to be 2, 3, 4 times better than their peers just to get a little bit of love and recognition. So the ladies often go harder than the men, the top tier ladies, that is. And that's who we want to celebrate today. But before we get to celebrating, you know what I'm about to do. Go hit that like button, homie. Go hit that share button when we're all doing, and make sure you subscribe as well. I know it's just a little click for y'all, but it means a lot to us because we get the engagement going, we get the likes going, we get the juices flowing, and we get more conversation down in the comments. And that's what it's all about, helping the channel grow. Just one little second click goes a long way for us, so your boy appreciates that. I will say though, before we jump into this list, and I'm very excited to do so, let's address the neo-soul colored elephant in the room. This list, I thought it over long and hard, this list will not, repeat not, include Lauryn Hill's Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Here's why. I know that there's always a constant debate about if it's a rap album, if it's an R&B album. If you ask me, it's both. I included it recently on my top hip-hop albums of the 90s because I think it hits both genres. But if you listen to the album, yes, there are a lot more vocals than actual bars. Even though, in my opinion, I think bar for bar, Lauryn is probably the best female MC ever at her peak. So while I felt a little way about not including her here, one thing that made me a little bit excited is if I take her off the list, I can shout out some different people. So we can get some different names on the list. So, not at all a shout or a shot at our girl because we love Lauryn, Miss Lauryn, don't want to get sued. But I want to take her off the list just so we can shout out one extra person who I think needs a little bit more love. And of course, we're always going to give Lauryn that 5-star love. But let's get started and let's see who slid in the list now that we had to show Lauryn the door. Come on, D Roth, let's hear it. Coming in at number 20, Yo-Yo, Black Pearl. You know how I said I wanted to kind of give Lauryn the side so we can open the door for someone else? I wanted to shout out Yo-Yo because I think that we think of the female MCs of the 90s. She often gets left out. We talk about some of the pioneers at the beginning of the decade, some at the end. Yo-Yo always seems to miss out on the combos, and that's not fair because she was dope. And this album specifically, she had a couple. This is the one I think that was the best representation of what we got from her. You'll see many albums on this list that are very, very solid in female empowerment. And this is one of those albums that kicked it off. Yo-Yo had bars, y'all. She could spit. And she also was very wise with her concepts. Black Pearl was the best representation of everything that best describes her, puts her best foot forward. You Can't Play With My Yo-Yo is my song, but beyond that, she had some dope albums as well, beyond just that single. Black Pearl was the best of it. Coming in at number 19, Da Brat, Unrestricted. So The Brat has some dope albums. She has, well, actually, her first 3 are dope. I don't really like that last album. But when you look back at it, it's kind of hard to pick her best one. Funkdafied, her debut, was, of course, her most known. It broke records, and it was the one that really put her on the map. Another Tantrum might be her best album bar for bar, but I think Unrestricted might beat both because it ties both of their 2 worlds together. It's got the bars, but it's also got kind of the personality, and she was able to play with that double time flow, and she really came into her own as an MC during this time. So, and this is also the home of some really cool singles as well. And some dope album cuts. That song with Kelly Price, why was not that should have been a single, Brat. That should have been a single. We missed out. That song was dope. But if you missed out on this album, and I know some people did beyond kind of the big singles in 2000, go check it out because it's one that best represents, in my opinion, the best of Brat. Coming in at number 18, Fox Boogie Brown, Il Na Na. I wore this album out in 96, 97, y'all. And it may seem weird now, but at the time, Foxy Brown was a really big deal. I'm talking about when she had the single with Jay-Z. People more checking for Foxy than they were checking for Jay. She was that hot in the streets. This album really captured that because she had some heavy hitters. Jay-Z was in her corner. Havoc from Mobb Deep. She had some great production, and she just had this aggression and confidence. Even though she was in her teens, she had this overwhelming confidence on the mic that really helped this album. Also, the album was really brief and brisk for the era, and y'all know I appreciate a good, brisk album. I need my albums tight. I need them tight. I don't like the long albums. This album was just like that, and besides the notable singles, the great album cuts, Foxy was on fire at this point. And probably still today her most recognizable album. Don't think it's her best, we'll get to that later. But this one is definitely one of the best female albums today. Coming in at number 17, Eve, Let There Be Eve, the Rough Riders' First Lady. Eve was another one you had to be there to appreciate her rise to the top. And for a very brief period, she was on fire as well. She was able to bring something different to the table because whereas her peers, Kim, Fox, Trina, they were so sexualized, it's just fine, that's what they do. But Eve was just more, she had the sexuality, but she was all about, I'm going to hit you with these bars first. You can think I'm the pit bull in the skirt, but the pit bull is before the skirt, if you feel what she's saying. Her debut album, to me, is her best work. Her albums are very hit and miss, in my opinion. Even Scorpion, I know that album, her sophomore album, is one that gets a lot of love. That one's kind of eh. The later ones are even more eh. But this one, I think, is the one that really carries her and the one that defines her career. We didn't really get enough Eve. She came, she was out. She started doing movies almost 2 or 3 years later, movies and TV shows. So good for her, get your paper, lady. But I wish we could have gotten one more album to the level of her debut. It was very strong. Coming in at number 16, my girl, shout out to VA, the Lady of Rage, Necessary Roughness. Probably the most underrated album on this list. I might change my mind later on when I see what else is on this list. But I think it's the most underrated because this is another artist who was recognized during the big Death Row run of the mid-90s as being a breakout star because she had some incredible guest verses. And of course, her single Afro Puffs kind of took off. But then when Death Row went kaput, she was kind of lost in limbo. We did get this album, and I thought this album was excellent. It's got kind of a mixed opinion these days, kind of a mixed outlook, but I'm on the edge of it's dope and y'all slept. So many bars. This woman raps Marie Callender's Creamy Tortellini, and this rampage of lyrics at one point is mind-boggling. I have listened to that 1,000 times over the past 25 years. I love it so much. She is such a monster on the mic, and she has a presence and aggression that 90% of male MCs don't have today. She is so fierce, and I can't say enough good stuff, but you know, she got that VA in her blood. What can I say? We born with it, player. We born with it. This album is great. Many of you, I'm sure, probably haven't checked it out. I think it holds up. Take a look. Coming in at number 15, my girl, yep, Lil' Kim, The Naked Truth. This album has quite the infamous reputation because it got 5 stars from the Source magazine. 5 mics, that is. I do stars, they do mics. 5 mics from the Source, and everyone was like, what is going on at the Source? This was during the Source's dark days. And it was like, what? Don't get me wrong, this is by no means a 5-star album, but it's a very, very, very good album and one of Kim's best. I think it works so well because she had stepped her game up lyrically. I think Kim doesn't get enough credit a lot of times for what she can bring, because a lot of her singles are more fun and lighthearted and about the sexuality, and it's not so much about just hard-hitting bars. This album, La Bella Mafia before it, and even on her debut, we see lots of that. But here, this is a great album that has that hard edge to it, but she's also got some fun little radio goofball tracks, and of course she got some nasty stuff because she got to keep that in there for y'all. It's a great look at overall her skill set, and I think it holds up pretty well today. Liked it a lot better than her more recent album, and again, it's not 5 stars, but it's very strong and I think very representative of the best of Kim. Coming in at number 14, my girl, Digga Digga, birth name Rashia, sweetest person, had no idea. I can tell you how many times I've said that. Whenever I hear the name Rah Digga, I gotta say Digga Digga, birth name Rashia, because Dirty Harriet is one of my favorite albums of all time. Rah Digga is another MC in the vein of a Lady of Rage, where she came in with a crew, in this case, the Flip Mode Squad, and absolutely stood out from the pack. And she was just destined to be a solo star, in my opinion. And this album was so great. It was so incredible. But even though it got a little bit of attention back in the late 90s, I don't feel like it got the love that it deserved. And it's definitely been forgotten over the years, which is a shame because Digga actually had later albums too that were pretty good. Not quite as good as this, but not bad at all. Her wordplay is incredible, and just like Rage and a couple others that I mentioned before, she has such a presence. She gets on that bar and she owns that track when she gets in the studio. And women often have to. They can't take a back seat because they know that they're going to be shortchanged unfairly. So you're going to remember her name. You're going to remember Digga Digga when she gets in that booth. Birth name Rashia. I'm about to listen to this after this video done. Love this album. Coming in at number 13, Little Simz, Gray Area. I know someone's going to pop up and go, oh, you got all these 90 rappers up here. Where the more recent rappers you bias? Nope. There are some women that are absolutely killing it today, and Little Simz is one of them. She is a UK-based MC that is just lighting the world on fire right here at the moment. Her most recent album, No Thank You, dropped at the very end of 2022. I slid it right under the radar for my best albums of the year, and I don't regret it. And while I think I personally appreciate and like that album a little bit more, The Gray Area is her best so far to me, because she's able to just weave this wordplay. This is the woman that says she's Jay-Z on a bad day and Shakespeare on her worst days. I gotta love that kind of confidence. When she takes those concepts with that level of confidence and wordplay, you cannot be denied. She is one that's still on the rise up. So you can't be like, oh, that's as good as she's going to get. I think she's got even better albums in her. The Gray Area was the one that made everyone take notice. I think she got more heat on the way. Coming in at number 12, my girl Missy Elliott, Super Duper Fly. And nobody on the YouTubes can tell me that I'm biased, because I put one of my favorite albums of all time at number 12 on the list. Now, I'll be honest, I'm sure some people thought that this would be number 1. And as much as I love this album, and I think when it comes to influence, it may be one of the most influential female albums of all time, I would put it at number 2 behind another album we're going to get to later. I don't think that in terms of actual quality that it's better than some of the albums on the list. Hence being here at number 12. But doesn't mean that album ain't dope, because if you listen to it right now, this thing might be 25 years old, but it sounds like it's still 50 years in the future. Absolutely nothing like it today. Missy is another one of these artists who has weaved hip-hop and R&B, and while she's no Rakim on the mic, and she will tell you that firsthand, she's able to just be so creative with the production, so creative with the concepts, so much fun to be had. And it's an album that you never heard before, never hear again, and it's one that has defined her career. Missy's career has been built on creativity and individuality. This album represents that to a T. Don't think it's her best album, we'll get to that later, but it's her most defining. Coming in at number 11, you knew we had to get here eventually. Salt and Pepper, Very Necessary. To be honest, I appreciate what Salt and Pepper bring to the game, but I've always been kind of hit and miss on them a little bit. I love their singles and I love a few of their tracks, but their overall albums, sometimes they just be alright to me. This one I think is more than alright. I think this one is actually a really good body of work. And we all know by now, if you're watching this video, you know the impact, the influence of Salt and Pepper on not just the female region of hip-hop, but hip-hop overall. This album is another representation of their ability to take social issues, put a woman's spin on it, and to basically proclaim their truth. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Plus, they're good at just making very, very fun music. The ladies always can. Shout out to Spin. Spin is my girl. We don't give Spin enough love. I'm going to give Spin some love. But Salt and Pepper are great. To me, this is their best effort to date. And can't really say anything else about a couple legends. I'm going to say 3 legends, because I'm going to say put Spin in there when you're talking about legends. This album is dope. Alright, top 10 time, and coming in at number 10 is Foxy Brown once again with Broken Silence. This is one of the albums that when it dropped was one of the most surprising albums to me at the time. Because if you remember, this is 2001 when this dropped. But when Foxy was out a little bit earlier, that's when she was doing her weird Lil' Kim cosplay era where she had changed her voice and it was so weird. Foxy was known for having that gruff voice, and now we getting this, I get this paper dog, I get this paper dog. Like, what is this? Ain't Foxy. This ain't Foxy. Well, this is Foxy. She embraced her Trini roots. She went hard in the paint. And this album, and to me, is one of the most underrated albums of the 2000s. Not just in terms of female MCs, but just overall. She really found her space as an artist and grew to her peak. And the most annoying and disappointing thing about it is this is pretty much the last true Foxy Brown album we got. I know we had the Brooklyn Dawn Diva thing, but that was like maybe an album, maybe a mixtape, depending on who you ask. And then, of course, we've got some of the unreleased albums. But hey, when it comes to actual full albums, this was the last one we got. What a way to go out. Coming in at number 9, another highly slept on album, Jean Grae's Genius. This album was one that I feel like was delayed for a billion years. I mean, I was like, what in the world is going on with this album? But it was definitely worth the wait. When we got her collabo with her, Knife Wonder, we were able to finally get some magic, because Jean Grae in the mid-2000s was one of those MCs that you just knew was waiting to blow up. We knew she had it in her, and she did not disappoint. She killed it. She killed it. And the thing that I love about this album, not just the bars, not just the storytelling, this was also the one that had a bunch of alternate covers that throw back to classic hip-hop albums with her own genie spin on it. I love that. This album was such a love letter to hip-hop, and it was such a testament to the MC that she was. We don't hear enough Jean Grae today. I don't know what she's doing, if she's chilling or what. We really need her voice back in the game because she was one of the best to ever do it. Coming in at number 8, all hail the queen, my girl, Queen Latifah. Before she was living single, before she was your cover girl, before she was your host on random award shows, she was the queen of rap. She was the original queen, and I don't see too many people taking that crown from her. This album was her debut, and it was such a great mix of womanhood and black empowerment, especially for the era. It's an album that if you listen to today, the themes still hold up. She could drop this today and y'all would go nuts with your think pieces because it was that much on point. And I also don't think Latifah gets enough credit for her lyricism herself. She's an incredible performer. We just saw that recently with the hip hop tribute that aired a few weeks back. But she's able to have such a presence. There's a regal presence about her. When she says she's a queen, it's not just something some Twitter stans gave her. It oozed off of her. This album is representative of that. And not only one of the best albums from the ladies, as I keep saying on this list, it was one of the best albums of the 80s because she was able to take everything from that era and make it her own, put a woman's spin on it, and tell her story. I miss Latifah so much. She's so dope. Coming in at number 7, another of my favorites of all time, Bahamadia College. The perfect title for this album because this is a master class, I'm telling you, a master class in lyricism. And it's proof that lyricism is not just defined and just not contained and just not held by the brothers, because Bahamadia is going to outbar your best person. You listen to this album and the intricacies of her flows, my God, it's one of those ones you got to pause. Back in the day, we had to rewind because we couldn't catch everything she was saying. Her flow, check out 3 the Hard Way, and she's just going absolutely bonkers over the beat, doesn't skip a beat, holds her cadence, but the flow is clear. Like you can hear what she's saying. She's not mumbling like some of your faves be doing. It's clear, it's concise, it's breath control, it's everything you need to be for an MC. Seriously, I'm for real. If you are trying to learn the art of MCing, I need you to go check that album out. It's a master class by Professor Bahamadia. She's dope too. One of my favorites of all time. Another super underrated album that deserves more love. Coming in at number 6. Yep, she's back. Lil' Kim, Hardcore. Some of you probably thought this was going to be number 1. And if in terms of influence, like I said earlier, if you thought Missy would be number 2, I think this is the most influential female rap album of all time. Even when your faves say that they aren't copying Kim, they are copying Kim. You know what I'm talking about. But the difference is, this was the first of its kind. There have been times where women were able to express their sexuality in hip-hop, but never to this blatant level. It was on another level. And at the time, the reviews were mixed. And over time, to be honest, my opinions of this album have been mixed. In '96, I was Team Fox. I was listening to Il Na Na. I thought this album was good, but I was like, Il Na Na is way better. In time, though, I've grown to appreciate it more. I know a lot of my favorite songs. This song, this image from this shirt, comes, of course, from Crush on You, one of my favorite songs ever. And the version that's on the album is nothing like the radio version. So that's fine. But even though it doesn't reflect some of the remix successes and the Ladies Night and all the things that Kim has become known for, as a body of work, is very important, very influential, and it's dope. I know that some will say, oh, but Biggie wrote this and that. Well, yes, we know Biggie wrote this and that, but I won't discredit what Kim did, what she took her career to. And honestly, if y'all want to start breaking down albums about who wrote this and that, some of your faves would be on the chopping block too. Just saying. This album is very important, very dope, and in my opinion, still holds up. Queen Bee, woo, that thing still hits and still being sampled today. One of the best albums of its era, one of the most notable of its era, and in my opinion, the most influential of its era. Coming in at number 5, yes, she's back, Queen Latifah. And this time with Black Rain, yep, she's back, almost back to back. This one deserved the top 5 ranking. I recently talked about how I just had a list of best 90s hip-hop albums of all time. Go check that out on soulandstereo.com. Check it out on the main site. This album, yes, rests very, very high on that list because it was one of the few female albums that broke the top 50. And that's not a slight to the female MCs. It's just the amount of content that the males had. For every female MC album, there's probably like 30 dudes. So kind of hard to have a smaller pool for them. But this album deserves that top 50 placement because it does everything All Hail the Queen did, except on another level. We got more of the critically acclaimed singles, UNITY, one of the best singles of all time in hip-hop if you ask me. But we've also had an ability to continue her narrative of empowerment, both for women, both for Black people in general. And it was a defining album for her. My favorite Latifah album and her best album, Yasmin. Coming in at number 4, yep, Rhapsody Eve. Rhapsody has 2 albums that are critically acclaimed, and they're almost neck and neck to me. You'll see the other one very soon. This one, I wouldn't put quite above that one, but it's excellent in its own right. As we talked about many of the albums here, a lot of these albums on this list spend so much time celebrating womanhood because that's something we don't see a lot of in hip-hop. So, of course, the ladies are going to take the reign. And Rhapsody did that to the next level. Every track is dedicated to a Black woman who has done incredible things, whether it be Michelle Obama or Oprah Winfrey or Whoopi, even though Leah gets a shout out. There's so many times where she looks back at the women who brought her to where she is and uses her intricate words, her intricate lyricism, intricate storytelling, and them banging knife wonder beats to bring a story basically to the public about this is what made me as a woman. I absolutely adore this album, and when we get to the top 10, y'all, everything up here is going to be bangers. Most of you probably have heard this album, and if you haven't, get your life together. But in terms of more recent female MCs, Rhapsody, without question, is at the top of that list. Coming in at number 3 is Missy Elliott, Under Construction. If you follow me for a few years, you're about to know the rant I'm going on, so get ready to hear it again. You clicked on the video, it's your fault. So Missy, when it comes to my girl, I would say has sort of a dilemma like The Brat that we talked about a little bit earlier. Missy's most defining album, we already talked about, was Super Duper Fly. Her most kind of the ones that people run back to when they think about successful Missy albums, or really her second and third, where it's The Real World or So Addictive, because they had the big singles and all the buzz. Under Construction was a great record, but I think it gets forgotten because at this time Missy had evolved and this album was so much of a throwback intentionally that people kind of go over their heads. They know Work It, but they don't really appreciate the body of work. In my opinion, from the biggest Missy fan you know, this is the album where she put it all together to make a great body of work. This isn't just some dope singles and some other stuff. This is a great album constructed under one roof. This is how you make a bomb album. She did that so well. We've got the incredible production that we already talked about. And as I mentioned earlier, this was her opportunity to shout out her history of hip hop. So it's a lot of throwback. If you remember the videos, it was a lot of, you know, Pumas, and she's got the hat, and she got the tracksuit, and she's throwing back to the 80s. It was a celebration of what made her her. And this was her love letter to that. And I think it was so well done that it was, in terms of album storytelling, this is the album that is the best representative of Missy as a creator. It's not her defining album, but it's the one where she put all the pieces together. And it's one of the best female hip-hop albums of all time. Yes, Lord. Coming in at number 2. Yes, we're at number 2 on the list. And Back to My Girl Rhapsody with Layla's Wisdom. Again, Layla's Wisdom and Eve, those two albums are really, really close together in terms of, you know, which one is better, which one is worse. I'm going to go with Layla's Wisdom for the slight edge. It has a more family-oriented theme, and I think that really plays very, very strongly here. But once again, you got Rhapsody. You know what it's going to be about. It's going to be about a woman telling her story with the bars that will blow your head off. I love that she's able to be so honest in her lyrics and to be honest about her family. It's a celebration of her grandmother, but it's also a celebration of her as a woman and her journey and where she's going and the stumbles that she gets through that. But she's still trying to figure it out, and you can see that play out throughout this album. It's one that really reflects on the black culture because, I don't know if you noticed, I ain't a woman, but I can relate to so much of what she's saying. So I can only imagine what a woman would be able to realize and relate to as she steps through this. And if we're just talking about the nuts and bolts of album reviewing and critiquing and putting stuff together, man, listen, it don't get much better than this. This album in this year was like, I think this was 2017. And I remember it being one of those years where it was almost album of the year, but it's like number 2. The same thing with Eve. It was almost album of the year, but it was number 2. I think she's got a 5-star album in her. If I revisit this list in a few years, I bet you it'll be another one that surpasses it. When it comes to female MCs, right now, ain't no better than Rhapsody. And coming in at number 1, MC Light as the Rock. The one that just started it all. If I added Lauryn Hill to this list and we were just talking about pure albums, which one is like rated higher, 5 stars, blah, blah, blah. I might give it to Lauryn, maybe, but this one is right there because they are right there. 2 completely different albums, but 2 albums that are just exceptional in terms of quality. And when it comes to the art of female MCing, this is the blueprint. This is the standard. It might not be the most influential in terms of Lil' Kim. It might not be as daring as Missy. It might not have the modern day ramifications that a Eve or a Layla's Wisdom have, both from Rhapsody. Eve's her album, not Eve the rapper. Shout out to Eve though. But what comes down to it is this is the one that really showed that women had a place in hip hop at the highest level. Every song here, it's a short album, but every song here probably played on the radio. Everyone is memorable. Everyone just exudes the energy and roughness and lyrical acumen that Light has. And while again, like Latifah, she's often thought of today as that lady that does the voiceovers on BET. Don't get it twisted. This is her defining piece of work. In my opinion, the best female rap album of all time. She ain't just an announcer, she's a legend. Get her name right, it's MC Light. Alright class, that's it. That is our picks for top 20 female MC albums of all time. I love showing the ladies love. Show that women rappers are out here doing it big. And these are the ones, so you know what to do. What did you think? What did you think about who did I leave off? Run to the comments, let us know. That's just nice. It's Women's History Month, y'all. Don't get in too much of an argument. And we can, hold up. Did I forget someone? I ain't forgetting nobody. If they ain't here, they ain't here. This edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions is a wrap. Play on players. Ladies do it better.